Howdy, 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 howdy. Check 1, 2. I think we're live. I think we're live. Let me get the camera on. Okay. Hello, wherever you are. There you are, up there. And welcome to another who knows what live ramble, live screen, SeligAudio. Giles Reeves, your host here. First, the weather. It's hot as hell. It's 93 degrees, 34 Celsius. It's crazy hot for Connecticut, and it's actually a little humid, something I do not miss at all from the South and my time there. I also spent time out west in the desert, and that's dry and it has its own issues. So I won't complain about a place where you get mostly dry days and then you get a couple of hot, humid days to make you thankful, because that's what I'm feeling like. Feeling thankful it's not this way all the time. Hopefully after this week we'll get some rain. It's been really dry too, and so I've been inside a lot doing stuff like this. Today we're gonna go into a deep dive of some CV routing and math and reason, and how to approach those situations where you know what you want to do but you don't know how you're going to do it. Adjusting some mix balances here. I got faders all around me you can't see, including below me here. Oh my gosh, they're everywhere. Look out. And what we want to do first is our quick tip of the day. The quick tip of the day is going to be control voltage related, since that's what we're working on today. The difference between source CV inputs and control CV inputs on a combinator. Now, the main difference is this over here. The control CVs are summed with the control on the front panel. So if I plug into control 1 up here, I will have the knob and whatever's coming in via CV being sent into the combinator to control whatever it's controlling. If I did the same thing through the source CV row down here, then when I turn the knob on the front, it would attempt to take control, but if there was a CV changing like an LFO, it would be grabbing control already, and it wouldn't be pretty. So what you get when you put it into the other jack is you can have the knob still function. So maybe it's like it's what I'm going to do here, so you'll see it in a bit. But it lets you have a front panel knob that sets the initial position, and then the CV, depending on how much depth is applied to that voltage, will modulate it around that point. So if it's a bipolar LFO, it'll go up and down above the knob position. If it's an envelope, it'll go up only or down only. And I've struggled with that distinction for a long time. I think I might have I don't know which one it is. It's not that one. In fact, let's get rid of that one. And that's coming. Here we go. This is the setup where if I do a CV control with the LFO, you'll see the LFO is going to, let's give it some depth here so we can watch these. Okay, watch these two faders. Watch these two knobs. It's a stereo patch and Thor. One knob's going positive, the other's negative. It's set up here. And right now, the LFO is controlling it, so I can't use this. But if I set the LFO to 0, hang on, I gotta do a little scrolling. Now if I move this knob, you'll see the filter knobs will track. The two knobs down here. They will track because this knob is assigned to control them, but there's also a CV that's controlling them as well. Right now it's sending 0, so it doesn't change anything. But as soon as let's push this all the way up. Say one of the filters all the way open. When I increase the level of the LFO here, it's going to start sending out a 64 plus or minus signal. So it's going to, as you can see, jerk the knobs back to the middle, and they'll start modulating there. So it's only, and again, this knob won't do anything now because it's overridden by that constant source of data. So the solution is to go into here where we can have this one knob that controls the initial position of these two filters, and then this knob controls the depth of the modulation above and below that starting point. Because two things can't control a knob at the same time, either via automation or a combinator. So you have to sum the signals first and then send them on to the knob. And you can do that with the CV merger, but you can also do it by just plugging it into this one here. Now, on to the fun stuff. Well, fun for me. Some people don't think of this as fun, but I love this stuff. All right, so let's go to some droning background instead of the beat. I can show you that session in just a minute. So we're going to go here. This was where I started to try to figure out how to do this two knob idea I have. All right, so actually let me show you something else very quickly here. We're going to get onto that. Normally, I'm modulating the decay time of a reverb here with an envelope follower. So normally, if I plugged it in and just patched it, it would shoot the rate up higher, or if I did a negative modulation, it would be lower. And for some reason, this doesn't do that correctly. That's what it's supposed to look like. So positive modulation would send it up, negative modulation would send it down. The thing is, I don't know how far down it's going. All I usually have is a percentage knob for depth, for modulation depth. That doesn't tell me how far down it's going to go at the peak, at the highest point or the lowest point, the maximum point. What I wanted instead was to have two knobs, or sliders in this case, or faders, and I want the first one to set the level when there's a soft signal or no signal, and then I want the second fader to set the level when the input from my envelope follower is maxed out. So whenever there is a vocal singing, for example, I can have one decay time, maybe a shorter decay time, so that when the vocal is present, it's not drowning in reverb. And then when the vocal stops, the decay time will go long and kind of hold that vocal in the reverb across the gap. Now, that's modulating the decay time. That's different than ducking the level of the reverb, where it still runs all together in the background, but it's just turned down. Ideally, you want both. So I put both into this. And the difference is going to be that when I raise the level of one of these faders, and this is really a crude way to demonstrate it, it will expand as if I've done that. And if I lower this, it will expand or contract as if I've done that. So these two are going to be totally independent of each other. Whereas if I've got this setup going and I pull the fader up, the modulation comes with it. So my minimum or maximum point is now tied to my initial point. So if it goes up an octave every time we modulate up, then it's going to go up an octave but down, starting lower every time. Whereas this is going to be a literal interpretation. It'll go from one knob position to the other as the CV coming into it increases. So there's a lot of different applications for that, but this one is pretty obvious. Dynamic EQ also comes to mind because we want to know where the EQ is going to when there's a signal present, not just it's going to go down a little bit. But we'd like to know, Like I'd like it to go down 6 dB, for example. And we can do the same thing here. We can set these two knobs or faders to where we have a short and a long sound, and then go from there. But before we hear this effect, I want to show you the process I went through to determine if this two knob approach would be possible. First, there was the math. I wanted to know what's the math behind this. I am terrible at math, but I love math. I don't know if anybody else can relate. It's fascinating. I sucked at it in school, but I wish that they had presented it in a more of a here's how it can change your life way, or here's why you'd want to know how to do this. So my approach to math is hack it. I usually have an answer that I know what it should be, and then I create the formula so that it gives me that answer. So I created a scenario, imaginary, where I had a knob, two knobs, 0 to 127, and one of them was at 40 and the other one is at 60. All right, so that's where I start, and I wanted to know how I could take a modulation signal that goes from 1 to 100 or 0 to 100% and make it fit into that range 40 to 60. And also, if I moved that 60 down below 40, it would work but inverted. So there could be any position I put these two faders, it would still work and it would be logical. The result would be logical. So I found that the formula is this. It's the input signal, which is this. This would be the envelope follower going from the minimum to the maximum, times the difference. So I have to know the difference between these two knob positions because that's what determines where my signal moves. It has to stay between 40 and 60. So to get it to do that, I need to tell it to go, 20, basically the distance between them, or the difference. And then I add to that the initial position. Why? Well, you'll see in a minute. It's just so that that soft knob, the knob that is in effect when there's no signal coming in whatsoever, the default position, so that it follows that. So basically this knob gets sent plus the modulation, the envelope follower, scaled, multiplied by the difference, which is the depth. And that might not make total sense why that works, but it does. And when I plug those formulas in and copy them down there, not like that though, there's one of these in each of these positions, and it gives me these results, which is the results I'm looking for. So having done that, the next thing I did was I came back to reason, but I started with reactor because that gave me a familiar environment, and it gave me some displays that would help me understand if I'm using this correctly. So here's what we have here. It's kind of a, well, I can zoom up a little bit. We have our soft and our loud faders. These are the two that we're going to use in the combinator. And then we have a control. So this is 0 to 127 coming in from an envelope follower. Imagine it was moving at fast rate. But by putting it on a knob instead of coming from the envelope follower, I can freeze it at any number and check the math and see how it lines up over here. If we move things a little closer, or in between even, we will see that it's really lining up nicely. So here's the idea, is when the signal is at the lowest, the softest, the level that it gets sent to the decay knob is going to follow this. So this is our soft setting, and this is our loud setting. So now if I'm at the loudest setting, the signal is related to this knob. This can be above that knob so that it moves between those two, or wider so that it moves between those two. Or they can be set the same so that there is little or no movement at all for testing purposes, or just to turn off the effect and use the ducking part, the audio, the loudness ducking, not the decay time ducking. So this is what the math looks like. We have the difference between the loud and the soft knob is calculated here. And let's use our 60/40 example because that will hopefully make sense. 60/40. All right, so the difference is, let's put the debugging tool on so it'll pop up here, 20. We already knew that. So we took the difference and we multiplied it by the input signal here, blah, blah, blah. And then we added the soft knob level plus this knob. So the two knobs, or the two faders, I called them knobs for a long time before I decided to make them faders, so that's still stuck in my head. The two faders, the difference between them is multiplied by the signal that's the envelope follower, and then the soft knob fader is added, and that comes out, and that goes to that meter where we actually see it. Right here, this meter. So that's the whole concept. They can be in any two positions, and no matter what I send to it, it will always... Now, this is important, another thing. If I send it higher than that, it'll stay within this range. So I'm restricting the range between these two knobs, but specifically the soft signal gets this level and the louder signals get this. So what would be the result? Well, we're going to find out. There's two basic tricks you can do. You can do a gated effect where you have the loud triggering the long decay, and then when the singer stops, I'll use a vocal as an example, the reverb decay goes short. So it's a big, long, ringy decay time when there's vocals, and then they stop and it stops. You can do the opposite, which is really more useful, I think, where you have a short reverb when there's a vocal, and then you have a long reverb in the spaces. And that can be really fun for anything that's a little bit ambient, that you don't want the voice to wash out completely, but it's a sparse track, so you can afford to let it fill up the space in between. Now, how do we actually implement that in Reason? Now that we know the math is really simple, it's a subtract, multiply, and add commands. I started by using this obscure processor, the Revolt by Black and Orange, and sadly the developer passed away in a wingsuit accident, is what I've heard. And so you are no longer able to purchase these, and I'm lucky I got them because this is a handy, handy utility. It allows me to look at the levels and also see specific numbers here in the numeric displays to look at a voltage and tell what it's doing, which comes in handy for this math thing since we have to hit specific numeric targets. Also, you can have two inputs on the back affect each other any number of ways. We have a subtract here. Oh, how handy. That's our difference. We have a scale here. That's a multiply. That's also handy. That's our multiplier. That's where we actually apply the modulation. And then we have our sum, which is the add the other signal. Now, since most people don't have this, I knew I couldn't use this, and I don't know that everybody has SeligAudio, so I couldn't use those either. But the first thing I had to solve was I have to get the positions of these faders into the formula, into the math here. And so what I did is I just assigned it so that this fader is linked to that one and that fader is linked to the other one, although this one, particular version here is broken, so this won't work. And I realized after I started to whittle it down and make it bite size, I came over here and I got it a little bit smaller. I got rid of some of the other pieces of the puzzle. Then I think I came over here and used a couple of Thors instead of the Revolts, and then realized I'm still using these faders, but we have rotaries right here that are the same thing. So the next version of it, which became the final version here, uses just one Thor. So basically we have the sweeper to get the envelope, the actual reverb, a compressor so that we can have a ducking effect. It's just bypass now, but we can have a ducking effect in addition to the decay time ducking. Would that be called ducking? Automation. And then I added a sidechain input for some fun shenanigans that I can get into in a bit here. And realized that when I use these internal rotaries, I don't have to feed CVs in from my Selig gain module. So now all of a sudden I don't run out of CV inputs. I can do it all in one Thor. So this is the math here. Slot 1 and slot 2 go to the same output, one the opposite polarity. So basically this minus that. That's our subtraction. That's our difference. Then this times that is our multiplication. And then finally, these two inputs going to the same output are summing. They're both positive, so that's the summing stage. So that's our three equations right there. First, though, I thought what we really needed to do was to establish what would be the simplest way to do this, which would really be a sweeper for the envelope and the reverb, obviously, and then something to invert. You can use Thor for this too. I did Selig gain because it's simpler. I'm not adjusting the level here, I'm just inverting it. And this is how it would normally work. And let's see if I'm lucky and I did it right. All right. So now let's switch over to where we can hear what I'm doing. Okay, so you can see when I'm playing, the decay time is short. And then when I stop, it goes long. So if I hold down a chord with the left hand and play some notes in the right hand, you'll hear it's not dry, it's short reverb. And then if I do this, it's long. The question though is, how short is it and how long is it? Well, this will set the long part. Also, how do I make it go the other way? Well, I have to put this down and invert that. So now it goes. All right. So you'll also notice that because it's an envelope follower, it's always decaying because the sound is decaying. And we can address that with the sidechain input. So that's basically the simplest way to do it. You take the output. Well, what we do is we go through the envelope follower and I set it to, it should be, oh, maybe I messed this up. We should be able to bypass the sweeper and still get the envelope follower, which is a really cool trick. Another reason why I love using sweeper for the envelope follower. And propeller heads, why not make an envelope follower module? I'm whispering. I don't know why. So the cool thing is we don't have to worry about the audio signal going through. We don't have to use a splitter either because we can just pass this through into the reverb and we'll tap off the CV and the audio gets sent unaffected on to the reverb. All right, now the other way. This is the one I really like because you can hold it between. It's a nice effect, right? Now this, got to be careful, this is infinite, so we could turn that down just a little so that eventually dies out. So that's the simple way. Now we could use a button on the combinator to do this switching so we didn't have to do it in here. But that's the idea. Now the complicated version and how we get there. Oh, well, you've seen the math, so let me just show you how this works in practice. Oh, I see one little thing I've done wrong, okay? Get into the combinator and make this bypass light because I'm using a dark background. All right. So, same thing, we go through the sweeper and we bypass it. We're using some spiders for some splitting here for another reason, I think. Oh yes, that's so I could do the sidechain trick. So I got more complicated. This is for the side chain over here. This is, I don't even know. This is to get it all back in, a dry and a wet signal to get it all back in. I haven't finished this combinator. I need to do a, just like this, a mute dry signal button up here in this combinator. Because this is not a wet dry, it operates at 100% wet, and then the signal is mixed in. I don't know, I wasn't thinking about making this as an insert, so I didn't really accommodate that possibility. I mean, as a send, so I didn't accommodate that. So I still have a few things to add, but here's how it works. Let's say we want this typical thing, the loud signal to be here. So that when I'm playing, it's short, and then when I'm not playing, we'll go up very high, but not quite to the top, right? So now we also have a sensitivity which adjusts the gain on the envelope follower. That means is that we can peg the meters one side or really come back so that it barely moves it at all. So if I'm low sensitivity, it'll barely move it at all. Hardly any signal there, so it stays mostly long. If we max out the gain, it'll go to the shortest almost immediately, and watch the decay knob here and stay there or close there for a lot longer. So you can adjust that to kind of get it to be within the range that you want it to be within. I'm also going to put a switch, there we go, where we can change that behavior so I can get, so I can set these. But what I'm trying to say is, here's how I would start from scratch. I would say, that's the sound I want when it's loud. And then I already know that this is the sound I want when it's soft. So now I can push this a little so it stays, pins that level down there. Okay. I haven't really used the attack and release a lot. You can go super fast on them, and you'd want to go fast on them if you're using a super short time here, because let's use this extreme example, that maxed that, so it's going to peg down at the bottom here. What happens is, when the reverb time is that short, everything leaves the buffer pretty quick, and so that when you release it and it kicks up to the long time, there's not much left. Makes it worse if you use a longer release, right? Because it takes just a second for it to come up to the maximum decay time, and in that second, it's decayed almost to silence. So we're freezing it, but we're freezing a super low level. By using a faster release, we come quickly to the max time, and so we don't lose as much. I've got a few things I recorded here that I thought were pretty cool. I think they used these basic settings. Okay, now let me show you one more thing. You'll notice that every time I play a chord, because it's a Rhodes sound, it decays. And at that fast of a release time, it's wiggling around a lot. But even around the defaults, I'm immediately coming down. However, what I've done ahead of time here in my combinator with my Rhodes, I also have a subtractor just doing a sawtooth and an envelope that's just a sustain. So it's like an organ. It just holds a note, and that goes into the sidechain input here, and then when I hit this button, it solos that and sends that to the input. Now My decay control signal is a static thing that comes on full volume. There's no velocity either, so it's the same volume every time. And what that allows me to do is cloud chords like, and then play the next one. Oh, hang on, it's not. Do I not have it? Let me make sure I'm playing this combinator. No, I'm not. Haha. That's why. All right, now I can do it. I don't know if this is the best sound for it. Might be better with more of the reverb signal. So it's almost like I'm lifting the piano pedal every time I play. And then when I release, the pedal's down, so it just keeps going. And if I didn't make this maximum here, I could keep it from holding forever. Okay, the difference would be, if it wasn't dynamic, it would just do this. And then we have all the chords running together. But by having this you can hear it doesn't sound as loud. So you'd have to adjust your playing style a little bit for it. But that's the beauty of using the sidechain input, is I can have a sound that sustains there. So even when I hold the chord down, it's not going anywhere. It's wobbling around a little bit because it's a chord. If it was just a single note, it'd probably stay. Well, that's the idea, and it's gonna be available when I'm done with it. I've got to, let's see. Oh wait, there's one more thing. I feel like it's a good time for a one more thing comment. We can also do traditional ducking, and the two of them together can be, I think, very, very useful. So let's turn on the ducking stage here, and now we can do and hear the difference. Too much of that. Let's do the maximum amount of ducking. Now we can hear the reverb go down when I play, but since the decay time is not ducking, it's all running together in the background. But when we combine the two, and it's more noticeable when I'm playing like a line or something over the held chord. And your dynamics will control that unless we're using the sidechain. And just like with the decay ducking side, we can force the sensitivity up to where it's gonna need to tweak those settings a little bit, but you get the idea. And I might redo that. The sensitivity should have been. Oh no, it's not supposed to be. Okay, hang on. I've got something double assigned. This was the last thing I was working on. So what I want to do is go to the compressor called ducking over there and get rid of the input knob assignment, input gain sensitivity. Bam. That was just adjusting the level coming into the compressor, which meant louder reverb. Now it should adjust the sidechain. Which should allow us further ducking, less ducking. Can't tell a whole lot. Again, I just added that feature. And what it's doing is it's controlling the... Oh, look at that. You know why it's not doing anything? It's because I didn't have it do the sidechain too. So that would have worked if I wasn't in sidechain mode. So simply add sensitivity to that. It's the second sensitivity. And a tip when you're doing a bigger combinator, I've got sensitivity, attack, and release 2 times on the front, and I'll add labels here that this will say ducking and this will say, this will say decay time for these 2 controls, and decay time, sensitivity, attack, release, or probably just decay time envelope and then the ducking envelope, and separate those 2 out. Now let's see if I actually got that working. Oh yes, gets a lot more quiet now. And then less. And you can even see it on the meter here. Actually, at the minimum level here, it's off, and I probably should correct that. So I don't want it to ever go off. I want it to go down to like 50% like this one does. So I just match these 2. And we should be good here. So I can still have a little bit at the lowest setting and then a lot if I want it. Then the overall amount of ducking. So this is, the sensitivity is going to be like, when does the ducking happen? How loud does it have to be? And then this is just simply the ratio, which is the depth. How far does it duck the signal when it's ducking? So no ducking, maximum ducking. And then attack and release. This release is not that long, really, so we don't really hear that as a super slow release, but it's useful for smoothing things out. And like I said, the advantage of using a little bit of both of these is you can get the level and the decay time to go down, so you basically have a quiet, short reverb during the loud, the loud vocal parts, and then a long, louder reverb in the holes between the lines. And it doesn't take long to set it up very nicely, and you can, of course, use any reverb here. And this will also adapt to EQ as well, dynamic EQ, and I'll make a version of that at the time when we're once I get this one done. I should point out one more thing here is there is a hidden knob on the screen that makes it all work. It's not hidden, it's hidden in plain sight, but you probably didn't notice it. It's over here. This little knob is actually the one that's controlling the reverb time, and that's the one that has to be there but should never be touched. So I just put the tiniest knob I could off in the corner there to make it work, and maybe would even put a graphic around it so that it would or do not touch or something. I don't know. It was an unfortunate, like, well, I can't make it work without that, so it's got to be there. So what do? Make it small and hide it, take its label off, and don't put tick marks around it or anything. And let's see how that is applied here. Yeah, it's this one. This knob actually goes to the decay time. I don't have a name for it, and so when it comes up here, it's this third one, it's blank. So the CV actually goes to that knob, and that knob controls decay. So that's a little bit weird, but this would be then let's see, if the decay time was down, this knob would also control decay 1 to 1, all the way up, all the way down. So that's all it's doing. These knobs actually, these two knobs don't control decay. They go to control the first two rotaries here, loud and soft, just loud and soft, or loud and quiet. Looks like I've mixed up my terms here. I like soft better. Constantly evolving. And speaking of which, I hope this made sense, showing you the evolution here of how we get from one place to the other. And I'm trying to remember if there's anything I left out. I did the math, then I built it in Reactor, and then I built this version over here with the revolts. Then the whole goal was to take stuff out, try to simplify it, and got it down to one Thor, which was really exciting, actually. One of those personal moments you can't really explain to others. Is like, yes, I got it all in one Thor. All right, that's the maths. And you can see all the work. I usually start, this is called dynamic verbs. I usually start a song file when I'm building this, so I'll have some way to record parts and play little things. And I don't know, this was another one. Oh, that one, the settings aren't right for that to play back. But I kept getting these really cool ideas, so I kept recording them. And that way it's all together in this one song file. Now I took, well, let's go back to this other song here that was playing when we started. Let's go back to it. Let me show you what I did with that effect. This has an alligator on it. So let's get rid of that. Doing that long reverb in the holes trick. But that was too much, I felt, for the song. Oh, let's hear it with that. Start at the top. Now I also have random on the two pulsars here. Every 16 and 12 bars, they'll send out a new random value for the direct signal and the direct signal and the gated signal, so that these are constantly moving as it plays. It'll get more choppy and less choppy over the course of the song at different times. And I'm still playing with that. Let me put the rest of the tracks in though, because we're soloed here. This one started, before we do that, with this weird track here. This was on peak with an update to their delays, where you could change the sample rate or the buffer amount. So basically, I'm playing the same chord over and over again randomly, so it's all out of time and weird. And then I'm adjusting the delay setting, and it's causing the pitch to go up and down octaves and fifths. This will be easier if I turn that off. You can hear the delay gets longer too. It's 75% longer, 50% longer. And you can hear sometimes I don't hit the button quite on the beat. And I just love how messy it was. That was not on the beat. And it gets denser and denser because the feedback is maxed, so the longer the song goes, the crazier that part gets. You can see it actually starts to get pretty dense here in the middle until I start to lower the feedback to go out. All right. Since we've got a little time, let me go through what I did on this. This is not atypical for me, meaning I often do something like this. This is my beat. I've got a few things that have probability set to only come on at certain times. 6% chance for that one. Still haven't heard it once. Nope, not that time. It's a little buzz roll. Here. Up it a little bit. There it was. So, this is a drum loop. This is a, fairly mainstream. You've heard that before, I'm sure, but by using it this way and adjusting the envelope a little bit, I can use the sounds but at a completely different tempo and a completely different beat. Yeah, this is 117 before, now it's 95. And I took the kick and snare sample out separately to use a little infuser on them. Brighten up that snare a good bit, actually. Make a little more oomph on the bottom for the kick. And then I also added this. Have to do it in time. These are samples I made of Gretsch kit. My Gretsch kit. It's right behind me. And then, I don't know why these all ended up being separate, because I built it slowly. I have ride cymbal for 4 bars. I did this in an XT, the ride, so I could do the alternate sample trick. Would have worked in Kong too. And then I used the polystep to play it. I used the drum sequencer to play these, and I used the redrum sequencer to play its parts with a 64 note long pattern, so I could have the cymbal crashes only come every few bars. Let's see. So that's the drums. Oh, this is fun. This is all the stuff that's not the kick and the snare on the drum loop. I should make more of that. And almost like clockwork, I'm using my favorite SSL compressor trick. High ratio, fast release, 1 or 2 dots, usually barely 1, which is already 3 dB, and a slow attack. It gives it that punch. Okay, without it, oh, it's also on the master. I'm double compressing it. I'm so bad. Not just once, but twice. So that's the original. A little on the bus and a little bit on each. Now, it's also making it louder, so it sounds like ooh, but it's a subtle difference when you level it out. And then these two. Now let's look at the bass. Surprisingly, I did not play this bass. This is the bassline generator, and probably the most underrated patch that's ever been in Reason, and it's been there forever. It's the first one in the factory presets, bass guitar. I know other people have talked about it. It's just so perfect for so many things. it sounds funky, even though there's not really a lot of dynamics going on here. It's pretty sparse parts, pretty open. And I'm just alternating between two patterns to get my key change. I'm literally just making it the root note A1 and D1, or is it D2? And then I'm coming over here and doing the patterns, and I did them here. I initially had a LFO switching the patterns in a combinator, which is why it's in a combinator. Then I realized I can't turn it off, and I wanted to have the bass drop out in a few places, like right there. And so I just put the patterns in, pasted them in. I did the same thing for the poly step. Goes back and forth between the ride and the hi-hat. Another one of those, I don't know why I did that. So we go to pattern 2 here. And sometimes separating the drums out across weird instruments like that gives me things I would not get otherwise. I mean, I've got the kit there, I've got the V drums here too, I could play them, but sometimes I like breaking it up this way. Just like when I play guitar, which I'm not a guitar player, I often have to copy and paste chords or play chords one at a time, and because of that I've ended up with some really cool situations, like I can figure out how to play every other chord. Even if I have to write them down, I'll say, okay, so here's how to play every other chord. And then in the time between the chords, when the other chord is playing, it gives me enough time to switch to the new chord and get my fingers all set, because I can't do that part very well. And I end up with these tracks, which when I pan them left and right, create something you would not have ordinarily thought of, probably, if you could have just played all the chords straight through. So it's really great with little melody ideas too, where the notes are going left and right and moving around. So sometimes when you cut things apart and put them back together, they don't go back the way that you think they would, and it can be interesting. Sometimes it just sounds weird, other times it's very interesting. Something to try though. Chop it up. And let's see, that's it. That's the bass, the weird polysynth mess. Oh, Glockenspiel. Do you have the Glockenspiel? Yes, we do. So, I don't know what that piece, I don't know what this piece is for. I just did it working with the dynamic reverb. And so usually on a live stream day, the song that starts and closes the show is whatever is the latest one I've been working on, because it's usually demonstrating something that I've been wanting to share. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up 5 minutes early today because it's hot. I don't want to get in the pool because I can. Sorry for gloating, but it's more of a necessity than a luxury today. And I'll be back in a month, and who knows what will be going on. I may be doing some studio updates then. I haven't decided yet what to do with the gear and the software situation, but I may be showing some new software, not mine, but software I may start using, and hardware, and we'll see how that goes. Then again, it may just be the same old exact setup in a month. I don't know. We'll see how it works out. For now, though, oh, it's dropped down to 91. That's only, what, 33 Celsius? Luckily, we do have air conditioning. When I was in Finland and Sweden and even Iceland a few years ago during a heat wave this time of year, nobody has air conditioning there. It's horrible. How do you guys do it? I guess you're hardy. So I'm off to be a wimp, and I'll see you next time. And go make some music if you haven't already.